Happy Media Days Eve. We are at Roosters. It is time for a fun, casual conversation at a fun, casual joint, and we are blessed to be joined by Justin Zwick, healthier than ever, and feeling great.
Feeling good.
He's taken
about 85%.
85%.
Yeah, it's a back.
Well, that's a long way from where you were
Amen,
over the last month. We have not had Zach Boren in quite some time.
Although it's been like 2 times in the last month or 2 months.
Well, there's something has changed since the last visit.
Oh, that's right.
I know.
Congratulations.
Thank you. I'm a daddy.
Gosh, yes.
So I'm like 85% too. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, you're probably worse off than I am, man.
Yeah,
I know
I
how
don't even
that
know
goes.
if I'm 85.
Yeah,
you know?
you're just getting through the
I'd
days.
be
now.
listening as like questionable. Game weight questionable.
You made it here.
I made it
Congratulations
here.
to the
Thank you.
family. Are you getting any sleep?
Not much. No, it's tough. It's tough because even like when you feel like you're in a deep sleep, but then he starts crying because he's hungry every 2 hours, you're like, oh. So then you wake up, and even though you're only up for a short amount of time, it messes with your sleep so much.
Oh, yeah.
So I don't know. I just explain it as like you go on a bender, and you like go on a vacation, beach vacation, where you're drinking margaritas every day, and you come home, you're like, oh my God, that's how I feel every morning when I wake up, and I'm not drinking. That's the problem.
You'll get
And it doesn't get better. No, it gets better. It gets much better.
Yeah.
And Bill Landis over here, sleeping just fine, I think.
Our little one did break his nose yesterday.
Oh, wow. Oh, no. Jeez.
So we were dealing with that through the night, which was fun.
That sounds
This is
very...
a walking injury report. What do you have, man?
No doubt.
I guess I'm...
You feel good? Golf game's good?
Golf game's good, and I'm stoked for Big Ten Media Days for like the first time ever. It's going to be a great one over in Indianapolis. We'll be heading over to get ready. Ohio State is on day 1, right after Tony Petitti, Ryan Day, Emeka Egbuka, Jack Sawyer, and Denzel Burke will be talking on Tuesday. So looking forward to that. It is.
Can we talk about something real quick?
Absolutely, Zach.
I don't love that they pulled it from Chicago. I understand the concept of Indianapolis, Big Ten championship game. I get it. Chicago was amazing.
Well, you got to experience it. I was going to say it's been 12 years.
Yeah.
Is that how long it's been?
Yeah, since I met Zach Boren in Chicago.
Chicago.
Is that why? Because you experienced it
we
in
just
Chicago?
had Chicago, and it was just it was fun. Like, I'm sure those guys go to Indy. I was in Indy. I know where it's at because I was in Indy for the Combine. And like, I know that area. There's just not as much to do and like have fun. I remember like 18 Sabino, John Simon, and I went in 2012 when we went to Chicago, and it was just fun because you stay in the city. I remember walking around. We went down, Michigan Avenue, had a good dinner. There was just something fun about being able to go. Now those guys are going, you're like, man, I'm kind of sitting around in Indy. What do? I just have the media side of things. And
they probably have to drive over instead of get on the private jet.
They're
still taking the
jet. They fly over.
Of course. What am
I just like it being in Chicago. The reason why I say that, big city, right? Like tons of media that's there. I remember, and it might be the same in Indianapolis, but NBC has a massive presence right there in Chicago. It was just like you could feel the energy.
Yeah.
And plus, I am a huge proponent. Now, you guys might think differently, that the Big Ten championship game should take turns between Indianapolis and Las Vegas. I don't know why, but that's me. Now that you bring in the 4 West Coast teams, Vegas is such a massive market. You're telling me Ohio State fans wouldn't love going to Las Vegas for a Big Ten championship game? You're crazy. I just think they should go back and forth. So then it's like, hey, keep it in Chicago, and now that's a meeting point. Sorry, I just went on a whole tangent.
If Media Days were in Vegas tomorrow, I think I'd be okay with that, Bill.
It'd be a rough scene. Media days were in Vegas. Yeah, I think you'll see a Big Ten title game in Vegas.
I hope so.
I think it'll happen.
Yeah, I hope so.
Think it'll happen.
Do they have a contract with Indy that they have to stay there for a certain amount of time?
No, they're moving it. When's 3 years? I think is the first time they're moving it. Is that right?
Yeah,
Minneapolis. I think they're playing.
Oh, okay.
They're always like, oh, well, we're ready to move it out. We want to do it somewhere else. Indy just makes too much sense for them. I don't disagree that there could be value moving it around Chicago, Green Bay, think of Minneapolis.
I know they're looking for a dome though, right? At that point in time, you can't have a championship game that late.
Yeah, you can't go outside at that point.
Minneapolis, then Detroit, moving it around. I think
Cleveland in a few years.
Jay-Z's got it. Got the dome built up there.
But see, the reason why I don't love Detroit, don't love Minneapolis, is because now you're talking almost like a home game, right? Like everyone.
You're saying Indiana or Purdue are never going to get there?
I don't think the Gophers are ever going to get there.
but even like Detroit, like, you know, Michigan's 45 minutes. I guess you have IU, but who's to know IU's going to get there? And Northwestern's still what, an hour and a half, 2 hours? I think from
about
Indy.
3 from Indy.
Okay, right, from three from Indy. You go to Vegas. There's no Big Ten team in Vegas, right? Like, who knows if Minnesota will ever get there? But Detroit, you've got Michigan. I mean, that's a 40-minute drive.
Game,
yeah, it's a home game for them.
Yeah.
Bill, you've covered both Big Ten Media Days in Chicago and Indianapolis. Do you feel like it has lost any luster in this current form? I don't know that most people pay. Zach has been part of it. Jay-Z played and is straddling both worlds now in the media. We've covered both. I don't know how much attention anybody's actually paying to the event itself. It's on BTN Live, which, again, is dumb, and it's made for television.
I was thinking about this. So Doug Lee Maurice and I were doing like our recording our Big Ten Media Poll show last night, and I was thinking like that they should put Big Ten Media Days on Fox, like in the middle of the day, right? What else is on? What's it like? Judge Judy is on in the afternoon. Like, just replace Judge Judy with Big Ten Media. SEC Media Days are on SEC Network now. They're not actually on ESPN proper. I'd imagine the same for ACC Media Days because, like, I get it. Like, those channels need programming this time of year, but it feels like there's like an opportunity to like reinvigorate the event and like actually make it more of an event. It feels like the SEC Media Days is like a huge deal, right? And like Big Ten's never quite lived up to that. I think maybe if you found a way to like put it on linear television, maybe it wouldn't make a difference. But I actually feel like it could like blow it out a little bit and actually become a pretty big deal.
Do you think because of social media it's not as big anymore? Because that used to, like, back in, you know, the day, that'd be like the only time you'd really hear guys talk, or the only time you'd really be able to hear or get an idea of them or their team or their thoughts. Now it's just out there.
I would almost completely disagree with that take, because I think there's more attention to it now because you look at college football as a brand. I would argue outside of the NFL, it's the strongest brand of any professional sport in the United States, right? Mm-hmm. So I think from that standpoint, there are so many people that are getting it seems more and more every year of like the football season almost seems like it scooches up a little bit, and now we're seeing it scooch back into January with the expanded playoff. And I know, what was it, 2 weeks ago, Big 12 Media Days, and they were talking about on ESPN. I sat there and watched it for like an hour, and I'm like, I don't care about the Big 12 whatsoever. But I was sitting there watching it because now football's on, and it's like, as you said, it's like Big Ten Media Eve. It's almost like Christmas Eve. Like you get so excited because you know once Media Day hits, camp's right around the corner, season's right around the corner, like stuff is coming. So I would almost say that the draw to Media Days is bigger. They just need to capitalize on it. To your point, I think people would get involved in it. People would watch it if it was there.
And there's like a fan presence at SEC Media Day too, isn't there? That does not exist for Big Ten.
Well, I don't know what it was like this year when
they were in Dallas.
Moved it to Dallas, but it was a big deal because it was in the same spot every year. It was at that Marriott property in Hoover, Alabama. I personally hated it. It was already 4 days. I've been covering Ohio State now for 12 years, so this is still 15 years ago that I was going to SEC Media Days, and it was spread out like 3 teams a day. They were going to come through the lobby. Fans were down there to get autographs and, you know, wait for Nick Saban and Lane Kiffin and everybody else. And they weren't upstairs to like take part in the press conferences, but we've seen that with the college football playoff and certainly with the Super Bowl. It's like if there are fans that want to be part of it and make it a scene to watch press conferences in person, that does make it more of an event. Now, I don't know that I necessarily want that.
You want people in the stands like Ohio State fans booing Sharon Moore.
Well, I didn't know how that was going.
You guys get to walk the red carpet in, and they're like, the writers are here,
or booing our questions. That's too much pressure for me. They're already doing that online. That was a dumb question,
Austin. What are you doing?
Yeah, well, they already have access to be able to do that to me anyway. But I don't. It's a catch-22, Zach, because you mentioned that with the Big 12 and ACC, everyone going earlier in the month. I kind of wish the way that maybe the Big Ten could capitalize is by going earlier in July. Now we're a week and a half from the start of camp, which is great because like once we're done, we're going straight into football. But you know, there's this whole gap of the rest of July where there wasn't a ton of stuff to talk about for Big Ten. The coaches were on vacation. It's been you and I were talking about it last week how quiet it's been. You could fill some of that void with content. I think conversation or content earlier in the month of July that would be more beneficial. Now you're like, NFL training camps are opening. There's about to be a ton of attention on that.
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. It's starting to start now.
It's like, I wish it was earlier, or it didn't happen at all, and you had local media days, which I think would have a lot more value than sending them out there to make a television show. But that's just me. Most people, I think, disagree with that.
I don't completely disagree. I don't hate it. I know the coaches would completely push back from earlier in the month because that's their time, to get away. And you and I were talking about it last week. It might be for, I don't want to call it hype. That's a bad word. For how much attention is on this Ohio State football team this year, and for how talented they are, and for how many storylines there are going into this season. And I don't even know. There's like this aura about this team this year that we haven't seen in a while. And maybe that's the right way to put it. For all of those things, it's the quietest offseason I've had in a while, right? Like, you go back, when's the last time a team's kind of had this aura of watch out? Maybe 2019?
I think there was still a lot of uncertainty about the 19 team. You knew how talented it was, but there was the transition with Ryan Day, and it wasn't like everyone pointed at them and said,
right,
that's a playoff team, 100%.
2015.
Okay, 2015, right? And there were, God, back then there was enough storylines to cover the entire offseason twice over.
A few stars missing from the opener.
Correct. And so now you have a team that has that aura about them, that attention. Everyone's pointing to them, not just here in Columbus, Ohio, but around the country. And it's like, that's a team with the bullseye on them. It's quiet. So maybe it's a great thing. Who knows? I hope it's a great thing. Maybe it means, I wish Ryan was here. We could ask him. Does that mean like guys are taking care of business? You have a mature team. They're doing what they need to do and kind of staying under wraps. They're not out at pool parties.
Well, you think the players hearing that kind of stuff. If you're a player on the team, you're hearing like everybody across the country is saying like this team is loaded. Like you almost have that extra pressure on you. Like, crap, we kind of are loaded. Like we better not go out and wet the bed here. Like we got to make sure we're getting right and doing everything that we're possibly can to go out and show that we are the best team in the country. So I mean, it could go both ways, but we used to throw the pool parties back in the day.
Oh, I know, that's what I'm saying. I love the summertime. Summertime was great. Pool parties were. Speaking of storylines, what are some of our storylines we should be looking at going into Big Ten Media Day?
Well, I think there's going to be an overload of national narrative about NIL and buying an all-star team. And Bill and I have talked about this a number of times, so everyone who's been listening on the podcast knows that I hate it because I think that it does a disservice primarily to the players because Ohio State did not build their roster that way. And what I'm hoping, Zach, is that on Tuesday, Ryan Day, Jack Sawyer, Denzel Burke, Emeka Egbuka, those three guys specifically who made decisions that, yes, are related in some way to NIL, partially, but not fully, can offer some resistance to that. To say, well, there were 6 players in the portal and then a bunch of seniors with unfinished business who, yes, are being compensated to stay at Ohio State, but it was not a blank checkbook purchasing.
And if they went to another college, they would be getting paid to play for that college. It's
listen,
that's the way of the world now.
I can answer that question for you right now without even asking those guys, and it's as simple as this. Ohio State, by far over the last 15 years, call it, has had the biggest bullseye on their back of any other program within college football. Maybe Alabama, but then again, everyone despises Ohio State, right? And you look across the SEC, Big 12, everyone looks at Ohio State. For them to finally have an NIL program, network, whatever you want to call it, and they're actually now being great at what they do, now everyone wants to point the finger and say they bought them, right? But guess what? You can go back. You can go back.
They already have all this. Now they figured this out. Oh crap!
No doubt, and that's what I'm getting at. Is now that they're finally doing something. Now everyone says, "Oh, they're cheating." No, it's just Ohio State's played by the rules forever and has still recruited great. Has still been the top program in the country, and now everyone's like, "Oh, it's unfair." You go back to when I was getting recruited. I know guys for sure: Clemson, Alabama, Georgia. The list goes on and on. Texas, they were getting paid, and I could rattle off stories that I know about. Talking to we could. Oh, yeah. You guys know a lot of the stories, right?
Yep. There's
been teams that have had 6-figure, 7-figure payrolls for the last however many years, right?
Forever.
Forever. And now those teams still have those payrolls. They just cost a little bit more, as it goes back to our conversation a couple years ago in LA. Now those $1 million payrolls are now $15 or $20 million payrolls. But guess what? Since they've been doing it, and they've been doing it for a long time, no attention is there. But now since Ohio State's finally doing it, and everyone's like, oh, wait, Ohio State can play in this game? Mm-hmm. Now it's unfair to everyone because Ohio State has been the brand of college football forever, and now they're actually capitalizing on paying guys what they're worth.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of goes back, like, didn't Saban kind of come out and say, like, okay, you guys asked for this.
You don't know what
we're going to play by your rules, and we're going to do it better than you guys because, to Zach's point, we've already been doing this anyways. So
they already had the infrastructure.
Exactly.
Oh, dude.
It's crazy how fast I got that up and running.
Yeah, right. Is it? Wow. Alabama, Tennessee, Auburn, they seem to be really great at it. Good for them.
You can hide a lot through churches and casino chips.
Yeah, there you go.
I know all the stories.
But I'm curious how that will work with those three, because I think that Jack, Emeka, and Denzel are, like, there are more options who could have been speaking up and been the poster boy for what I'm talking about for Ohio State, but those are three of the best. Like, that will describe their conversations and their decision not being based solely around NIL. I mean, Denzel was talking in December, Bill, about wanting to be a top 10 pick, which he was not.
Yep.
And the number one cornerback. Jack Sawyer, being someone from down the road in Pickerington and not having beat Michigan, not having won a Big Ten championship, let alone a national championship. Emeka in the same boat. But, they come from different parts of the country. They all have slightly different motivations individually, although the collective, I think, collective motivation to accomplish those other things is significant, and they were not driven primarily by NIL, which is the thing that's crazy to me, because I understand there being conversation about Caleb Downs and Will Howard, but is that buying an all-star team?
The easiest way to say it is, like, they all could have gone to the NFL and made a lot more money
there you go.
than they're currently making, right? In this day and age, like, when you have it available to you, you do want to make sure that you're protected financially, right? Like, Denzel Burke would have been a second-round pick, like, at worst. I'm going to pass that off right now. I better be getting something to do it, but that doesn't mean it's your primary motivation, right? For every single one of those guys individually, it made sense for them to come back, I think. I think to a man, they all stand to improve their draft stock this year. And also, they want to beat Michigan. They want to win a Big Ten championship and win a national title. Like, it all makes sense. Just that when it all happens, like, en masse, the way that this happened to kind of, like, coalesce, I think it's mostly that it scares people, but then like that fear of it actually happening manifests itself in the conversation that's annoyed you for the past 4 months or whatever it's been.
It's crazy to me. But, like, that's, if you want to say that about Ohio State writ large, that they spent money to keep the roster together, I would say that there's an element of truth to that. Where I get more annoyed is the disservice that I think it's putting on Jack Sawyer's decision specifically. And he's going to be asked to talk about NIL and the way that this roster was built, and, like, that really has nothing to do with his decision.
It's because it's Ohio State. Yeah. Yep. That's why it's Ohio State. We could even remember Big 12. I watched the media day, right? We could go back to the Kansas State coach talking about Avery Johnson getting offered $600,000. I think he said by whatever program just to go into the portal, right? Like, we could have storylines we could talk about, which I don't know how this is went under wraps, but it's probably because of the SEC. Nico, the quarterback at Tennessee, right, came for $8 million, and then guess what? We didn't see him last year. We're going to see him this year and see what kind of player he is. So guess what? Tennessee, your $8 million is going to either put up or shut up, right? And then we could also talk about who was the recruit that was Jaden that went to Arizona State.
Rashad.
Yeah. And $13 million lawsuit. He was promised $13 million. No one's talking about it because it's SEC. Could you imagine if an article came out of a recruit, Dylan Raiola, right? Let's talk about him. I was committed to Ohio State, didn't go there, ended up going to Georgia, but then Nebraska. Ohio State offered me $13 million, but then there were some things and they backed out on it. Could you imagine the storyline? And we're not hearing anything of it.
Yeah.
Yep. Nothing.
All because it's Ohio State. So that's why your NIL questions are going to come in. That's why everyone thinks they are paying a team. I think Ryan came out and he said something like you need $13 million, and they said maybe they were closer to 20. Who knows the numbers? I would want to know what Georgia's payroll is. I want to know what Texas A&M's payroll is. UT's, like USC, the list goes on and on. Miami, like, what's their payroll? But no one's asking that question because no one cares. They only care about Ohio State.
So Texas A&M had #1 recruiting class in the country, right? Just last year.
I think they spent $20 million just on that class.
nowhere.
They tried to. They bounced a lot.
And nobody talks about it though. You know,
yeah.
I mean,
$20 million on one class. That's not a team. That's one class.
Exactly.
Okay. Well, what do you want to hear from Ryan Day on Tuesday, Zach?
I would love to know. I was thinking about this. I would love to know, as a head coach this time of year, you know in your head the way the season's, I don't want to say play out, but at least the first couple weeks on the way things are going to go. I would love to know what Ryan thinks is different about this team than other teams in the past, right? And I know the last 2 years he's had, or not last 2 years, but last year had a big question at quarterback and was wondering, like, hey, what's going to happen? 2 years ago, it was kind of, it was a younger team, didn't have the leadership seniority coming back. Now this year, how's this team different, right? How's this team different from 19 from that standpoint? Like, head coaches aren't dumb, you know, and they give maybe some proper answers in front of the media, but deep down, Ryan, like, what's the difference of this team compared to others? Do you feel more in control? Do you feel more at ease? What worries you? What doesn't worry you? Like, that's probably what comes to my head. Maybe it's not a firm question, but it's the gut feeling of Ryan, because I think head coaches, more than any other ones, have the best gut feeling of a team going into a season.
100%. Now, I mean, there's still guys that he's probably, the new guys, he's still learning them, you know, and how they're kind of coming along. But he got a good sense of spring ball, how they fit in, and kind of how they're going to, add to this team. What I would love to hear from Ryan is our offensive line going to be ready to go?
You're obsessed, man.
Well, because I'm an old quarterback, because I know you can't have a good offense without having a good offensive line. Right. So does he think they've turned a corner to, that experience from last year? Or does he expect these guys to come out and be, maulers? I mean, do we expect that we can lean on them? Now, I know that's easier said than done sitting here now. He's going to say, yeah, we still have work to do and all that kind of stuff. But, just his initial feelings on those guys coming back. I know he's not going to name a starting quarterback. Does he have a plan? Because there's a lot of quarterbacks to get reps for, and if we're going to nail it down to these two that are going to get the most reps, or we're going to say there's 3 or 4 guys in this, how do you break that down during camp? Do you run it into the season because you have a few games that you can kind of maybe what ended up happening last year? We're like, all right, hey, this is not a bad thing. We don't have a starting quarterback, but we're going against these teams that they both should be able to play. And then it kind of just took off, and it seemed like Kyle was going to be the guy. But, I mean, does he have a plan like that? I would love to kind of get his thoughts on just how he's going to tackle that, because it is a huge part of this offense. And if Will's going to be the guy, if you feel that way, I just feel,
do it.
Push the chips in. I mean, this guy has, he's won a Big 10 or Big 12 Player of the Year, right? He's had experience. He's done it probably with less. If you think that's probably well, yeah, fair. If you think that's how it's going to be, you put the chips in and say, well, you're going to be our guy. Until you go out and show us you're not it. Yeah. We're going to let you go on this. So that kind of stuff, just how he's going to handle it, I think that's huge. And I think that's a lot of people are probably asking that same question. How are you going to handle that? Because everything else around those 5 and this one back here seems to be pretty much submitted. Another thing, what are our tight ends looking like? How are they coming along? We like to run 2 tight ends a lot. Are we going to be able to do that? Can we trust these guys that they're going to be able to maybe give our tackles some help if they're up there blocking? That sort of thing. So I think the tight ends, and then tying into the offensive line, quarterback offensively, that's kind of where I would go with. If I was asking him any questions.
Do you think there truly is a quarterback battle?
No. That's another thing. Yeah.
Not especially.
Okay.
But then why not come out and just say it?
Well,
Politics.
I mean, I love the idea of competition. I mean, yes, competition makes you better, all that good stuff, but you get into camp, you have only so many weeks to nail down a guy who's been here for under a year in your offense, getting him reps. If that's how it goes, and there's really not a competition there in your head, make him the starter, in my opinion.
I think it'll be interesting to me, like how Ryan Day talks about Will Howard. I don't think he'll name a starter, but there's a way to have those conversations that pretty obviously lets people know like what the deal is. And we were talking about this the other day, Austin. Like I there's a national assumption for sure that it's going to be Will Howard, because why would you think anything differently? I think locally it's a little different because it was still portrayed as this open competition in the spring. A starter obviously has not been.
We know
named.
what the backup.
Yeah.
Devin Brown.
Devin Brown was
definitely
first in like every single practice that we saw,
and he definitely, like, just from watching practice, seemed like a improved player from last spring, certainly. So there are a lot of variables there that, like, I understand why people might think that it's an open competition. I just don't think you go get Will Howard and then have it be an open competition. But if Ryan says some things that feels like he's sort of like empowering Will as the starter without directly saying he's the starter, like, I'll read into that for sure, because I think we all assume it's going that way. I get why you don't maybe name a guy in July, but you could if you wanted to. I don't think he will, but he could.
I don't think he will either. But I mean, if that's the way you're feeling, probably quickly in camp is when he makes that decision.
Let me ask this question: do you guys think there is a position battle in Ryan's head or the coach's head at a position that we don't think there should be a position battle, or that we don't think there's a position battle really at? You get the question?
I think coming out of spring, I think that there was a large assumption that CJ Hicks had such a great spring and was primarily working with the ones that Sonny Styles was not in line to start at linebacker, and I think that he will be the starter ahead of CJ Hicks.
So you think people,
I was going to say linebacker room maybe is one.
Okay. So you think that people believe it will be CJ Hicks and Cody Simon, but
I think that people are. I can't speak for them on that, Zach. I think that no one is quite sure what to make of it, and it's maybe like an assumption that there's a battle between Sonny and CJ. And maybe even a fair assessment that there's going to be a rotation between those two, and that everyone's like, well, you can't take Sonny Styles off the field, and you love CJ Hicks' athleticism, and all those things are true. But I think that Sonny will be like clearly ahead of CJ, and I might be off base on that. But if I am, then that would be a position battle that I'm not thinking exists right now.
Yeah. Yep.
So that would probably be where I look.
Yeah.
I think everyone knows right guard is up.
Yeah,
for grabs.
that's an open one,
and then
right?
Jay-Z brought up tight end. I'm not sure exactly what that's going to look like with Will Kazmarek and G. Scott and Jelani Thurman in there. Bill and I have talked about this. It's probably going to take all of them and the depth of the room, and Patrick Gerd as well, Bennett Christian. So there's maybe more of a competition for playing time at tight end than people would assume, or maybe they already assume that there is. I don't know, but there aren't many spots, to your point, Zach, that are like clearly up for grabs. I think this is one of the most straightforward
that's
depth charts.
that was kind of my question though, of a position that you don't think is up for grabs, and that's why I said maybe I said it wrong. For a position that you don't think is up for grabs, is there a position battle behind closed doors that not everyone knows about?
I wonder about center a little bit. Like, Seth McLaughlin's struggles last year at Alabama are enough for me to think like maybe there's a chance that Carson Hinsman has a really good August, and maybe they think he should be the returning starting center, I guess. I wouldn't pick that, but it's hard to identify positions that I think would fit that description, but maybe that's one of them.
I would have felt better about that one if they'd have played him at guard at all in the spring.
Yeah,
because they didn't really mess around with putting him out there at all. And
they did play Carson.
And they did, yeah. So that just makes me feel like they feel like he's going to be that center of the line. But
How about this, Zach? If we assume,
I just want you to throw one at me.
If we assume that the starting group of wide receivers is Carnell Tate, Jeremiah Smith, and Emeka Ibuka, a healthy Brandon Ennis could certainly make that a lot more interesting in August. He didn't have a chance in the second half of spring camp. I don't know what that looks like, but this was the number one wide receiver in the country a year ago. And he came in late, didn't have that opportunity, has dealt with injuries. If he's ready to tap into that, I don't know what that means, like in a head-to-head battle with maybe a Mecca in the slot, or if he's going to be able to play outside enough to challenge Carnell. Probably not Jeremiah Smith based on what we saw in the spring. But if it's one where if we're taking that premise that you threw out, like there's not competition, Brandon Ennis could definitely make it one.
Yeah. Okay. I like it.
I think that's the best I can do.
Kicker.
That's the best one.
Kicker.
Good.
I've got
Hunter's in town, right? The old 6'7".
Yeah. I've got three in mind.
Three.
I've got
Three.
three.
Oh, man.
I've got three in mind.
Okay.
And I don't think any of them will come about, but I do think all three will see a lot of playing time, and maybe the third one, you guys are going to say it's not a real one, but I I think Caden McDonald is going to play a lot of snaps on the interior.
I love it.
And I think there is a chance, now might not happen because of seniority, but I think there's a chance that when the starting defense rolls out, he replaces Ty Hamilton. Love Ty Hamilton to death. I don't think you can take out Tyleek Williams, but I think from a nose guard standpoint, Caden McDonald's going to play a lot of snaps this year, and he's a really good football player. The other one I don't see this happening, I love Jermaine Matthews. Love him. I think he's a great player.
You guys have a conversation?
No. Hey,
the show.
I love what I'm hearing.
I love Jermaine Matthews. Now, where does he fit in? You can't take Denzel Burke out. I don't think you can take OGB out. Now, the question is, I don't, because I love the attitude that he brings. Now, maybe the hot hand, who knows? I think, maybe, but Jordan Hancock's had some injuries. Who knows how he plays? It might be OGB, but I know they love the tenacity that he brings to defense. It's hard to bring that off the field. And then number 3 is, and this might not be a position battle, but the person that runs out with the number 1 offense as tailback, I think, is Quinshon Judkins. And I know they want to protect Trey. And everyone says it's going to be a 2-back system, but I almost think that's impossible. Look at Michigan last year. It's Blake Corum, and you throw in Donovan Edwards. Even the year before that, right? There is a marquee back at all times. Even when Ohio State had it. It was J.K. Dobbins, and you throw in Mike Weber, right? And they call it two-headed, but there is a marquee back on every team, even when there's 2 backs. I think the marquee guy is going to be Quinshon Judkins, and they're going to sprinkle in Travion Henderson in Chip Kelly's offense, whereas I think everyone thinks it's the reverse.
That's spicy. I like
Based off what I've seen on Twitter about the new football game, he's unstoppable.
No,
out of the backfield.
I have seen that.
It's a 90,
that's my hot. We're giving hot takes already. That's my hot take.
We're going to have some more coming our way after we take a break. By the way, not only is tomorrow the first day of Big Ten Media Days, but it's also Appetizer Tuesday /Threes Day.
Threes Day.
And it's going to be onion feathers.
Ooh,
and they come
your tail feather sauce.
Feather sauce. Some people call it pluckin' or pluck you sauce. Bob's not
delicious,
here, though,
that's
so
for
I'm
sure.
just telling you, it's feather sauce. Those are $3 at your local Roosters location. We're going to take a break. We're at Roosters. It's a fun, casual joint. And then Berm is going to be here. Stay tuned for more.
Roosters has been so fortunate. We just want to be able to give some of that back to the community.
They donate to organizations that are near and dear to their heart, and we're so fortunate to have been with Roosters now for a long time.
They always go above and beyond to help support our foundation to further help veterans.
It's just a wonderful feeling to know that Roosters supports the Buckeye Cruise for Cancer.
All the folks at Roosters are just genuinely kind folks, and they want to make a difference.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters.
Thank you, Roosters Foundation.
All right, welcome back into Roosters, a fun, casual joint, and it is more fun than ever because Berm is here. No offense to Bill.
Bill's a lot of fun.
But,
wow, that's just what we're doing, huh?
Right for it. And hydrate.
Well,
Big Ten Media Days are good.
I guess he's here for a good time.
Big
He's just
Ten
gonna,
Or that's the amount of tea that he's about to spill on us.
Drinking out of the pitcher.
Water.
I know, but it's tea.
No, I just, I got to hydrate. Big Ten Media Days are here. It's time to get back into the flow, into the rhythm.
Hydrate up because we have some road beers later on Monday night.
You never know. How it goes.
Okay.
In Indy.
Berm, you heard Zach pose the question. Do you think there are some surprises in store for this team that we can learn about on Tuesday in Indianapolis?
I don't know that. I mean, we've sort of talked it to death for 8 months now. I don't know that there's a lot of surprises. I like where your head's at with the Caden McDonald thing because I do think he's going to be an impactful player for Ohio State this year. I don't believe for a second that he will out-rep Ty Hamilton this season, however. Which I guess when he's going to play, there's going to be rotation. You're gonna probably see 4 or 5 deep at defensive tackle. I think Jason Moore's in the same conversation.
Correct.
There's going to be guys that have to play because not only is the season longer, but you lose all these guys after this year, and so you can't go into 2025 without guys having any experience under their belt. So I think the one area where I'd be interested to see what happens is with Kenyatta Jackson because I think that there's been a discussion about him for the last 16 months or so where you're waiting for that next step, and he's a junior now. He's finally he got into Ohio State at 6'4.5", 228 pounds, and he's finally in that 255, 260 range. Really looks like exactly what you want an edge rusher to look like. It's an area that Ohio State has had a deficiency the last few years, if we're being honest, as far as pressure off the edge. I mean, we saw Jack Sawyer ratchet that up a little bit at the end of the year. But that speed rusher off the edge is something they've desperately needed. And I think that if Kenyatta Jackson's able to take that next step, and they put a lot of investment into getting him to return, let's be honest. Like, there's all the talk about Ohio State, bringing back all these dudes, but there's players like Kenyatta Jackson that didn't leave that I think a lot of people anticipated would, especially when Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau came back. So that's not something that happens for free in the year 2024.
Who do you think he replaces?
I think that there's an opportunity, and again, some of it is contingent on what we've been begging for in the last couple months, which is a multiple looks on defense where you can have a little bit more flexibility. I really think that there's a world where you can have Kenyatta Jackson, Tyleik Williams, Jack Sawyer, and JT Tuimoloau on the line at the same time, and that's
play almost like a 3-down with him being the roaming guy.
Or you just do the Rushman package where you have a third defensive end on the field because they're big enough and they're JT and Jack can play inside.
Yeah, they go down and handle themselves.
And with Tyleik, and if you just want a pass rush package, that's as good as it's going to get for Ohio State. And then you can decide what you do with the slot corner and whether you want to put CJ Hicks. You could have CJ Hicks, Kenyatta Jackson.
Well, I was going to say you can also involve CJ Hicks in that.
Right, there's ways you can get really creative with this defense if the coaches allow it to happen, and that I think is the biggest problem. It's been a reluctance to experiment on the defensive side of the ball. They were really good last year, but it was base for most of the season, and so now that you are entering the graduate course of the defense under Jim Knowles, I think it's time to.
Well, to your point, a defense
creative.
like that would be a tough matchup for Oregon, right? You have Dylan Gabriel, who is great with his feet. They want to get him on the run, and you have a guy, or you've got 4 guys rushing the quarterback like that, and you have a CJ Hicks playing that nickel position who can support the run, who can run down Dylan Gabriel. It's a tough matchup.
Yeah, and it's an offense that is going to pride itself on getting rid of the ball quickly. You need to have a pass rush that is in your face quickly. And as good as Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau have been, they're not like the 1-step, 2-step hit the quarterback type. You need a little bit of a developing play to get there, generally speaking. And in that game specifically, out in Eugene, that's going to be a 3-step drop and fire. You need to be able to affect the quarterback quickly. And I think that a guy like Kenyatta Jackson is a piece that has not really been talked about this offseason, but the more you think about it, again, he's not coming back for free. So that is an investment made by Ohio State for a reason, and that's not just for next year because there's no guarantee he'd be there next year.
Zach, do you think that we're going to see some of that schematic flexibility and versatility this year? I felt like last year when we were doing Buckeye Q, every week was the same.
Very much so. Very much so. Do I know that there are coaches that want to do that? Yes. Do I know there are coaches who are very against bringing in new ideas? Yes. I think you will see. My guess would be you're going to see more defensive formations, whether it be different fronts, different things, because now with Ryan Day taking a step back and letting Chip Kelly run the offense, I think Ryan's going to want to see those things because he knows as an offensive-minded coach what puts offenses in tough positions. And coming out, breaking the huddle, or just looking down, knowing you've got 4 down every single time, and then you just got to figure out coverages, makes it a hell of a lot easier than seeing different fronts. And you get a 3 down, you get a rushman front, you get all those things. So Ryan, now being an offensive guy, is going to have more time to go to the defense and say, hey, listen, these things make an offense go crazy. This makes a coach burn a timeout when you give him these different looks. And so I do think you're going to see that. I also think they have the personnel to do it now. This defense is deep, right? Yeah. We talk about how deep they are. Defense tackle, defensive ends, linebackers. We already talked about DBs, right? And the different things you can do with that. I think you have to. You have to keep offenses on your toes. And Jim Knowles has always been known as an attacking defense coordinator. And I think finally, the floodgates are open with Jim Knowles.
Does the second year help him? Just being around a little bit longer, guys understanding maybe what he's trying to get after. Now he can, like you said, masterclass.
Yeah, you're in year 3 of Jim Knowles. If this isn't the time to if this isn't, you're not only in year 3 of Jim Knowles, but you're in year 4 or 5 for most of your defense. Yep. It is this is the time to do it. If you're not doing it now, it's not going to happen next year.
Well, plus let's put a shining light on the guy that they got this offseason in Caleb Downs. And if you ever wanted a true general on the football field that can run a defense, Caleb Downs is that guy. You want to be able to check in and out of stuff, Caleb Downs is that guy. You want a guy to be a ball hawk and be able to come down and play in the box or save your butt on the back end, Caleb Downs is that guy. They haven't had a free safety like Caleb Downs, and I loved Malik Hooker. I think Caleb Downs, just from a intellectual football player instincts, is better than Malik Hooker.
He's like Jordan Fuller smarts with Malik Hooker athleticism.
Correct.
As a sophomore.
Correct.
But he's also
that's a great comparison.
When you put him back there with Lathan Ransom, you have 2 security blankets back there now that you can trust fully and let the front 9 experiment and play around. And I think Ohio State's going to be in the contention for a national championship, even if they just do everything vanilla as base as they want. But that's fine. But if you want to win the national championship, if you want to go out to Oregon in a game which, I think you're looking maybe number 1 versus number 2 in the country at that point, or at least, top 2 or 2 or top 4 probably. Like, that's going to be the marquee game of the college football season. And for Ryan Day, like, the discussion about him is, can he win the big game? Can he win the big games? And that game, if Ohio State goes out there and loses to Oregon, and there's all the talk about losing to Michigan and what that could mean, but from a psychological standpoint, if you go out there and you lay an egg at Oregon, maybe you lose 31-30 on a last-second field goal, whatever, fine. If it's not a classic, like, there's the wheels are that close to coming off 6 weeks into the season, I think, for Ohio State, if that's the case, because we talked all Monday about pressure. On the podcast daily, you guys already talking about earlier, the pressure on this team to be great. If you go out there and you lay an egg in that game and you don't have something to match, Oregon beat the crap out of Ohio State in 2021, not because they were better, because they out-schemed a defense that had no idea what they were doing. And I can't imagine that
beat the crap out of them. It was a 7-point game.
Because C.J. Stroud was able to keep Ohio State, and Oregon was without 3 of their best players, okay? Like,
I get your point. Ohio State was never felt like they were in the game.
And now you have I can imagine that game, for all the talk of games that stick in Ryan Day's craw, like, that one has to.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and
I agree. He did demote his defensive coordinator afterwards.
Right, so. Like the day after. Like, that's not that's pretty abnormal.
Touche. I will have to concede the point to you there.
Like, I think that there's something to be said that game, like, everything you do for these, you scoff at it when I say that the first 5 games are warm-ups because you play at Michigan State and you play Iowa. Like, those are good preparation games, but everything that first 5 weeks has to ramp up towards Oregon.
Yeah, I actually don't hate the matchups going into it. Now, who knows what you're going to get from Michigan State, just because new coach, Oregon State kind of ran a pistol, but they still like to run the football. Kind of reminds you of the Le'Veon Bell type of Michigan State. So you'll get that. Iowa obviously is going to be at
You've got a mobile
32.
quarterback there with Aiden Childs. Like, you got some creativity.
Correct, but that's what I'm saying. Like, you're going back-to-back weeks where you can throw some different things out, but then you can also hide a lot of stuff for Oregon, because Michigan State, Iowa, Oregon, right? So it's like you don't need to show your cards on a lot of these defenses.
We were talking about it on the podcast daily maybe a week ago, 2 weeks. Time is a flat circle. Like, the preseason, which is what I'm considering the lead up to Oregon, is broken up really nicely when you have Akron and Western Michigan to start. Then you get a week off. Then you get Marshall, which will be a little ramp up, and then you get Michigan State, which is a ramp up, and then you get Iowa, which will, force you to be a lot more disciplined and maybe get back to the basics after a couple weeks of tomfoolery, which I'm sure we'll see from Marshall and Michigan State. I think it sets up really nicely to prepare Ohio State for that Oregon game, but some of that is going to be just contingent on the coaches to not let it be a game that Oregon dictates the terms. And that's, if I have one problem with Ohio State under Ryan Day, and like, if you look at the losses, every time they lose, except for the Georgia game, it feels like Ohio State let their opponent dictate the terms of the game. And that did not happen against Georgia. Ohio State completely dictated that game until, the things happened.
It still was playing the game it wanted.
Yeah, I mean, it that was the one loss in the Ryan Day era where I felt like Ohio State was like, we are in charge of this game. And if you lose because they have better personnel or because you lose your best players or whatever, fine. But every other loss has been a game where I thought Ohio State just got bullied into playing the other team's game. And I don't think, as you head into the Oregon game, the 5 weeks leading up to it, I think you can prepare to play your game.
The two things that
I don't know why all of a sudden Media Day turned into a talk about
there's
going to be a lot of Ohio State Oregon talk on Tuesday.
For sure. Well, the two things that I think this Ohio State team is going to have compared to some of those other teams and with those losses is Ohio State's going to be able to run the football a hell of a lot better this year than they have probably since 2019, right? With a running quarterback, what Will Howard's going to be able to do, Quinshon Judkins, Travion Henderson, they are going to be able to run the football and not just solely be relying on wide receivers and quarterback to make big plays. The other thing is I know the defense was really good last year. I think this might be the best defense Ohio State has ever had. And not to put too much pressure on them, but you go back to some of those defenses, maybe the best ever.
That's a lot of pressure. I mean, I said once Caleb Downs transferred, I thought that, and once you bring everyone back, I think that there's a potential for the secondary to be the best collection in the secondary that Ohio State's ever had. And that's going back to like the 96, 97, 98 teams, which had 5 first-round picks at corner, the 2013 to 2015 or 2016 group, which was incredible. And this, like, ceiling-wise, can be as good as any. Now, I think what's interesting is that on defense, we've talked about linebackers and how you don't really know what you're getting there. But talent-wise, I think we should all agree or can all agree that they are probably more talented this year than they were last year or the last couple of years as far as just pure athleticism, pure ability.
Yeah.
Now,
I would say that. Now, I do think there are bigger question marks, though. Yeah. Not behind Cody Simon. I think whoever the will is, whether it be Sonny Styles or C.J. Hicks, there's some question marks there.
That's what makes it interesting. But then, you talk about the running game. Yes, the running game ostensibly should be significantly better. But, and you preface that by saying you don't have to rely on the quarterbacks. But, like, you need to know what you have at quarterback and wide receiver. And at this point, we don't. Outside of Emeka Egbuka, everything at wide receiver is based on just raw potential, and it's turned out fairly well for Ryan Hartline since he took over, obviously. And at quarterback, I mean, yes, Will Howard should be, I think, going into camp, be the presumptive starter because you don't make the decision to bring him in if that's not the case. But I wonder how much we can read into the fact that he hasn't taken the job, or at least hasn't been given to him yet, if that's Ryan Day playing the quarterback game that he likes to play, or if there's truth to that, if it's been him not elevating, or maybe it's Devin Brown pushing the so we're never going to get those answers from Ryan Day, which I think is the frustrating part.
Well, we always want them in July, but we've never once got them.
No, I know, but I also
get them for Justin Fields. You're not going to get
in the history of football. I
also think it's one of those things because Ryan Day is such a player's coach. And he doesn't want to create the culture where guy transfers in and he's given it. Like Ryan Day is always one of those guys where you earn your stripes. No matter what it is, no matter how good you are, you earn your stripes. And that means getting in front of the team and showing out and doing what you can do. When that happens, he's going to give it to you. Ryan probably doesn't think the 15 practices where the first 7 or 8 of them, Will Howard probably didn't know much, right? He's still learning.
He's trying to remember the play call.
Correct.
Remember where do I go in the huddle? Who do I talk to?
Right. Until a quarterback gets in there and knows, which I'm sure Will Howard's learned over the summer, checks, has a firm voice once he gets in the huddle or when he's doing certain things and he has that aura about him. Mm-hmm. Ryan Day won't name the starting quarterback because he knows the expectation of Ohio State is, guess what? If you're the quarterback, every dude on that team better know you're the quarterback.
Let me ask you this. You brought this up a few days ago when we were talking on the Daily about Chip Kelly's influence in the quarterback selection. And maybe because it's now really his job to make that decision, do you think that there's a chance that happens faster than it has in previous times? Or do you think that Ryan will still be ultimately pulling that string?
I think it's going to happen earlier because I think the decision is going to be cut and dry a lot earlier than what it was. I think we can all agree that, I don't know, even to the end of the year, I don't know if they truly knew Kyle McCord was the best quarterback on the team.
Yeah, I mean, they had no choice at that point because of Devin Brown's injuries.
Right? I think Will Howard's gonna make that separation earlier in camp than what we've seen in the past couple of years, and so that will happen. I mean, Justin Fields was named starter, like 10 days into camp, week and a half into camp?
Like,
maybe?
I think it was 2 weeks.
2 weeks, okay. Whatever
it
was
standard,
after the second scrimmage.
Yeah, okay, yeah, which is pretty standard.
Which is
so
when CJ
halfway
Stroud
through
was,
halfway through camp, essentially. I think Will Howard, it will be around that time, but it's not going to go through the season. We're not going to be talking about this week 1 going in Akron like, hey, how many reps is each quarterback getting?
Right.
Yeah. I mean, we didn't think we'd do that last year either, and we did. I think this year it's easier because Ryan has Chip. Last year, it basically is all on Ryan, right? You know, I'm making this decision. This is our quarterback. It doesn't go right. You know, when it's you're the only one, it's probably a little bit more pressure. Now he's going to say Chip. Chip's going to say, make him our guy. Are you sure? Are you sure it's ready? Are we ready for this? Yeah. We're sure. Okay, all right. I feel good. You know, he has somebody a sounding board almost to go off of, where it's not just him making that decision, because it was him, Corey Dennis, Brian Hartline. You know, for the most part last year. So it's all on him.
Last year was so different because you're dealing with 2 quarterbacks Ohio State recruited from high school. They brought in, they developed. And I just don't think that they were ready to, like, upend the natural order of things by saying, this is our guy. And then, like, Will Howard, and this has been the argument from the end of December, he does not get brought in unless you believe he's going to be the starting quarterback. Like, unless you're 75% of the way there, you don't even make this move. Yeah. So,
but you also think about everything going into last year. Offensive line was a massive question mark, way more than Jay-Z says. You know,
100% more than it is.
But O-line was a massive question mark. Running back, massive question mark. Travion Henderson didn't even finish the year last year because of injuries, right? And had a sophomore kind of slump, so that was a question mark. Then you go into the quarterback competition. You're like, oh my God, what's going on? Really, your only true or your surefires were Cade, Abeka, and Marvin. So it's like there were so many question marks where I don't think Ryan was at the point of, yeah, okay, this is my guy right away. At that point, you're trying to shore up everything around the quarterback position, especially knowing what you had before you come out and put all your effort into, hey, listen, this is our guy, this is the guy we're going with. You needed one of them to create that separation, and I don't think really either of them did until week 4 of the season.
But I don't even think that happened in week 4.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of just happened during the game. Where it's like, oh, Kyle's going back in on this drive.
It
like,
seemed
we
like
never saw Devin.
There was a plan to ramp up the Devin Brown playing time
at Purdue,
and then the ankle injury happened, and then all of a sudden, I think any plan you had to maybe make a switch, like if Devin comes in and plays well and does the things, like we didn't see Kyle McCord. I mean, he had the drive at Notre Dame, which was obviously huge, but
his highlight of the year.
He did throw an interception to play before that should have been caught that wasn't, but that's irrelevant. You know, you get a second chance and he took advantage of it. But like there was an expectation that Kyle was going to continue to ascend, and that just did not happen. And so I don't know that Ryan Day would have made a switch to Devin Brown last season, but I think that it was clear that like it was in the debate at least, because and then that debate got taken away because you didn't have the option because you couldn't get on the field. So
I think your debate this year is much more of who is the second string quarterback over who's going to be the starter.
And how do we use him? Do we learn at all from Devin Brown getting hurt last year in goal line situations? That we might need that.
Well, that you don't need
back up at some point.
Yeah, but now you have Will Howard as the starter.
Ferry's the same.
So,
but that's my point. I think the bigger question mark is who is the second string quarterback compared to who's challenging Will Howard for the starting position. I think that's cut and dry.
Right, because you do have the debate between Julian Sayin and Devin Brown, and then where Lincoln Kienholz falls into that. I mean, Aaron Olentangy is a little bit behind and will be through this season. It's not a natural expectation that he would be in that conversation, but between Devin Brown and Julian Sayin and Lincoln Kienholz, like
who's second string? I think that's a bigger question mark than who's starting week 1.
That's going to be an interesting battle.
Yeah.
Well, it's great to be talking about ball again. It feels close, and it is close. Camp is in a week and a half, and Big Ten Media Days are tomorrow, Tuesday, which is also Appetizer Thursday, and you can get some onion feathers and some feather sauce for just $3.
Just $3.
It's amazing.
Delicious.
When do we get to hear like Berm's crazy season predictions?
We'll do bold predictions shortly. I mean, not like today or nothing. But
This will be soon. But as soon
I'm
as
ready.
Very soon.
You are ready. I can tell that
I'm ready.
You've had like a month
I'm
of
hyped up.
extra consciousness of being awake, just thinking about ball.
No. What do you
Up
do?
all night
What do you
just
do at
thinking
2
ball.
o'clock in the morning when
Yeah.
you're feeding your son up? a bottle
Rewatch
for
Big
an
12
hour?
Media Days.
I'm like, oh my God, what am I doing?
You're set for the rest of the week because you'll have
Yeah, right,
tons
yeah.
of content to
Put that
consume.
TV on in the middle of the
There
night.
you go.
Boom, Big
There
Ten.
you go.
He's going to know everything that Greg Schiano said about Rutgers.
Oh my God, everything.
So, good for Zach and good for the Boren family.
Mhm.
Thanks to Justin Zwick for being back. He's feeling healthy. Thanks to Bill Landis and Jeremy Birmingham, of course, for being in here. I am just Austin Ward. Really excited to get to Indianapolis. A lot more coverage coming your way on the podcast all week long. This, though, is Roosters. It's the Horseshoe Lounge. We'll be back here next Monday in a fun, casual joint. See ya.